evening, everybody, and how are we all doing today? It's Sunday, the 14th of September, 2025. Halfway through September already. Where has the time gone? This month is just flying by again. Time is just flying by once again. However, September is prime harvesting time. I don't know about you, but we're getting lots of harvests coming in at the moment. It also seems to be the prime time for veg exhibitions, for showing off our veg. We had our local town show yesterday, and this has given me the inspiration and the idea that I thought we might talk about this today. Before we get into that, let's see if we've actually got anybody joining us. First of all, we got Adrian saying, hi, Richard and all. Good evening to you. We have got Nicola saying, a little early for a change. Evening, Richard and all. Boy, has the weather changed, hasn't it just? Hasn't it just? Allotted Chef, aka Nathan, has joined. Evening, all. Good evening to you. Jenny is there. Hello, everyone. I hope you are well and have had a great week. Same to you. Rob is there. Hi, everybody, from a very wet and cold Leicester. Good evening to you. What have we got? What have we got? Turbo Streamers there. Good evening, Veg Podcasters. Good evening to you. Jenny says, I'm not too far from you, Rob, but not much wind here yet, but certainly very wet. Excellent, excellent. Well, I just skipped a line. Bally Cillian, a lot of my man. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Bally. Hope you are well. Hargrave Gas, evening all. Hope you've had a great week. The skies have just opened up here. I think we're going to have to talk about the weather in a minute. Kate is there saying, good evening, Veg Army. Good evening to you. Anna Jones is there saying, evening, gardeners. Good evening to you. Gary is there saying, good evening, everyone. Hope you are well. Today, I have been busy pickling beetroot and making coleslaw for my homegrown veg. First time making mayonnaise inspired by last week's Cookalong. It's so easy to make mayonnaise, isn't it? I absolutely love making mayonnaise. We've tried to make a small bowl of mayonnaise every week now because we love it so much. Turbo Stream says it's been jolly wet here since lunchtime. Anna Jones says evening, gardeners. Oh, I think we've already had that. Nicola, thumbs up all, and Digwell. Oh, slap my wrist, late to muster. Indeed, indeed, you are. Evening, Peter. Hey up, George. That usual thing that they go on. Is that it? That's all the comments. Something's just changed on my screen, so it's just thrown me for a minute there. Yeah, I think we are caught up on the comments. My screen keeps moving. Anyway. How are we all doing this week? Yeah, of course, the weather has changed. Friday and yesterday afternoon, weather was actually quite nice. I managed to get out and do quite a bit of gardening. But since then, the weather has changed. I believe there is a storm coming in, but we seem to have avoided it at the moment. But there is a storm coming in, and it means that it could be blowing. I hope everyone out there has battened down the hatches, made sure that they're not going to lose anything, everything's secure, just in case this storm does come in. Anyway, that's not what we're going to be talking about tonight. Tonight, we do want to talk about, as the title exists, exhibiting vegetables. Now, this comes, yesterday, we had our town show, which includes the flower and produce show. And I went along there. I was actually exhibiting on the I'm a member of our local camera photography club. I'm actually a committee member, so I had to go along, help set up. So I got there for 9 o'clock in the morning, and I spent about an hour stood outside in the rain because they couldn't let us in because there was a risk of thunder and lightning hitting the marquee. Anyway, got in, set up, and during that time, they were also setting up the flower and produce show, i.e. people were turning up with all their items that they want to show off. They want to pull into these competitions to try and show off that they've grown the best potato, the biggest cabbage, the biggest pumpkin, things like that. And it was a lot of fun. It is a lot of fun. Obviously, there's a period where the judges come along and have a look and see what they're going to make of their comments. Highly professional judges. There's a lot that goes on behind the scenes. And then, of course, first, second, and third prizes are given out, highly recommended, and things like that. So my first question to you, has anybody ever exhibited in their local flower and produce show? Hands up if you have exhibited in the local flower and produce show. I didn't this year. I went a couple of years ago. Well, I've been for a couple of years. I keep saying I'm going to exhibit, but I never actually get round to exhibiting. I tend to lean myself in the fact that I grow food. I grow food to eat. But I do want to go along and try and encourage food growers, and I really do feel I should take part in some of these competitions. But do you take part? Over on Instagram, Kitchen Garden Plant Centre has joined. Welcome along. Lovely to see you. Margaret says, we are here. Meant to tell you, we got 6 times 40-litre bags of well-rotted horse manure from the Ferren Garden Centre, delivered for £24. Oh, I have to check that out. I'll have to check that out because that could be very, very useful indeed. We got Chili Kate says, hi everyone, hello to you, hope you are well. Rob says, that's not bad, Margaret, at all. Turbo Stream says, winds to pick up overnight here, I think. Calm at the moment. Fingers crossed that everybody is safe. Dahlia679 has joined us over on Instagram. Turbo Stream says, I've never shown my produce at a show, as to my knowledge here, there isn't a show anywhere near us. Must be a countryside thing. Now, I don't live in the countryside. I do live in a town, but I do think it was more prevalent in the countryside. My local village, and the village as a child, this was my local village that I grew up in. We had one every year, and my next village over, where a lot of my family had one every year as well. So I do think that it goes on more probably in the countryside, but I think it is becoming a thing in towns as well. Rob says, I came fourth in Pete Trenmouse Giant Onion competition. Fantastic. Digwell's put his hands up to say he has entered competitions before. Excellent. How did you get on if you've entered competitions before? Nicholas says, never, but hope to maybe next year for fun. I think it is important that we recognise it is all for fun. There are some serious competition growers. There's some people that really do go all out and grow their food grow this every year for the competition, and they take it very, very, very seriously. Nathan has given a thumbs up, saying that hands up, saying that he has also taken part in the local produce show. Nicholas says, I get horse manure delivered by the lorry load, or I can go collect from the field. Well, lucky you, lucky you. Digwell says 55 mile per hour winds down your way tonight. Yeah, not what we're seeing at the moment, though. Not what we're seeing at the moment. I changed something on Instagram now, and it's annoying. Where were we? Kate says, I've entered one and got a second and 2 firsts for veg and my rhubarb vodka. That's a key thing, actually. They often do like bakery and preserve competitions alongside this as well, which is something else perhaps I should look at doing. I'm kind of really intrigued. Nicholas says, I've 5 ton that's been rotting down for 5 years. Lucky you, lucky you. Chili Kate says, yellow weather warning is for most of England. It was quite blowy when I just took the dog out. I took the dog out this morning to get it out the way, and it ended up being a 3-hour walk instead of an hour and a half, because I decided I wanted to look at something, but the weather was quite good then. Anyway, back to the chat. Nathan says, don't grow for the show. Show what you grow. Oh, that's a good way of putting it, isn't it? Don't grow for the show. Show what you grow. Show what you grow. That could be a way around it. Toby Stream says, I'm not sure if there was a local I would enter. Like you, I grow to eat and store for the winter. But as Nathan just said, grow. Show what you grow. Show what you grow. I've given up showing for now. No more room for the silverware. So Digwell, you must have won quite a bit for it. Like that, Nathan. Indeed, I like that too. So yeah, So if you have exhibited as Digwell and a few of you others have, how well have you got on? How did you find the experience? Did you find it daunting or off-putting, or did you just throw yourself into it and found it to be all okay? Now, as I said, I've always avoided it in the past. It's not been the type of thing that I'm really that interested in, but I am starting to turn around. What, from those that have experienced, what would be a good thing to start off with? I'm thinking the biggest pumpkin or those sort of things. They're easy to do. It's easy to grow a big pumpkin. I reckon I could grow a bigger pumpkin than the most of the ones that I saw exhibited yesterday. So I'm in with a good chance of getting first. But there's a lot of, it's not as easy as it sounds. I was reading an article the other day from somebody in a Facebook group who enters these competitions, and the media had said that he waters his pumpkin 10 gallons of water every day, and he turned around and said that's not strictly true at all. But it does make you think, what special things do we need to do if we were going to make it to grow for these show? I think straight carrots are obviously something that people were going to be looking for, perfectly straight carrots, which isn't too difficult if you've got the right soil. If you can get carrots to germinate, of course. My soil is very hard for carrots to germinate down on the allotment. At home, I've got more of a chance, but not easy to get it right. The last gave the last trophy back a few weeks ago, says Digwell. Kate says, I'm still sorting my garden, so didn't bother this year, but will next year. Excellent. What, ready to win it back later this year? Potatoes. Nicholas says potatoes. Oh, what to exhibit? Margaret says, Nicola, I don't think Richard saw my comment at the beginning. I did. I read it out about Ferring Garden Centre and the horse manure. I'm going to have to look into that and see if we can get some, because that'd be very, very useful. Kate says, I was intimidated as I wasn't the most experienced there, but I can see it being addictive. I was so excited to get in to see if I won anything. Interesting. So you were intimidated, but you overcome that intimidation. I say that because I find it quite intimidating thinking about entering, just the whole etiquette, the whole thing that you have to do. I know there's a whole bunch of rules that you have to obey, like for the potatoes. I think if it displays 5 potatoes of equal size and shape, you have to display 5 potatoes of equal size and shape. I've heard stories of people adding an extra potato because they thought it just looked perfect and so good, but then they don't end up getting any points at all. They end up losing on that. I think the judges are trained to do this as well. It's not just people who know what they're looking for. It's trained judges. It's certainly the case with our photography club, trained judges. Rob says, to me, start with the smaller things like tomatoes and potatoes, etc. Yeah, I've got to admit, I've grown this year. Tomatoes and potatoes have been fantastic. I've probably grown some of my best tomatoes this year in my auto pot because they've just done so well. So yeah, definitely for next year we could look at that. Turbo Stream says there has to be someone who had the prize for the biggest melons. Yeah, has anybody had a prize for the biggest melons? Margaret says, sorry, don't worry about it. It's fine. There's a lot going on. Nicholas says, the reason I said potatoes, as you don't know what you have till you harvest and you pick 3. So what number they specify so you don't have the anxiety prior to harvest. That's a good point. That's a very good point. Yeah, I've definitely grown some of my best potatoes this year, despite it being dry, because of my heavy mulch of straw. And that's definitely something I'm looking at again in the future. More straw, more things like that. You have to be good to enter into the Giants. Yeah, I mean, I'm going to do it at a local level. To start off with anyway. If I do it, I'm still in that sort of mind. I grow food, and that's what I want to stick with. Digwell says the judges need to pass an exam and they are either RHS or NVS, National Veg Society, trained. So there are certain qualifications. You can't just rock up and be a judge, which I always think is slightly wrong in some ways. One of the things this is coming from, what's his name? The guy, he was a celebrity chef, but he had like down in Dorset, a farmhouse type thing that he was growing food in to cook. It's a double-barreled name. Hugh Fernley Whittenstall. I knew I'd get there in the end. I remember one of his shows, he went to the local food and produce show, and he was trying to get the best tasting carrot into the ceremony, which I thought is a good thing. Best tasting carrot sounds like a good winner to me. Turbo Stream says, not a show, but I grew 3 blackcurrant cuttings for the autumn open day this year. They were unsold, but they were decent plants too. There you go. They're always there for next year. That's a good thing about plants. If you look after them, they will be there for next year. Maybe have another Veg Army Camp virtual Richard as judge. Yeah, I was going to do that. It's just so much organisation that I'm not very good at. We do want to bring back the alternative Veg Grower show. I've left it a bit too late now, but perhaps for next year, if I pull my finger out and really organise it, then next year we could do the alternative Veg Grower show. Now, Digwell says you must follow this schedule, e.g. 9 runner beans. Displaying 10 or 8 will get you an NAS, not as scheduled and disqualified, which boils back to what I was saying earlier about the potatoes and things like that. People do try and show in more than what they have because they just think it looks good. And yeah, following that guideline to the letter has got to be the key thing there. River Cottage, yes, he funny with stall. River Cottage, that's it. Just posted a pic of my certificates in the Facebook group if anybody wants to go and check it out. That's him. Blimey, Digwell. Obviously, a lot of them. Turbo Stream says they were taken from a table, so I guess someone on our allotment now has them. Well, there you go. At least they're not being wasted. They're still in good use. So who here, we've asked who has, but who here would like to exhibit their veg? And is it going to do us any good? I say, is it going to do us any good? Because I stand here and I'll say, I want to encourage people to grow their own food. That is my aim. That is all I want to do. Encourage more people to grow their own food. And is it really going to work? And what can you tell by good looking vegetables? Well, I think the answer to that is quite simple. As judges will tell you, they can tell you a lot about how well looked after the plant is by the quality of the vegetable. If you've got carrot that is riddled with loads of holes from carrot fly, it's not been looked after very well. But if it's a perfectly straight, perfectly clean, perfectly consistent carrot, perfectly tapered, it's probably been looked after well. So I think that's the point behind them, is it's not so much, or the veg isn't so much about what it tastes, it's about how well the plant has been grown, how well that plant has been looked after. Read that one. Rob says, yes, it is very strict at some of the shows. Of course it is. Then Digwell says, cookery classes, best tasting carrot are harder because this is subjective, not objective. This is why I love chatting to you guys, because you come up with some points that I never really think about. There are criteria for each class. Food, it's all down to the judge's taste. Absolutely. Jenny says, I'll help you organise the alternative veg show, Richard. Thank you. That'd be very useful. Nicholas says, I think if you have time and the interest, why not have a bit of fun for a day? It is going to be a bit of fun. It is going to be a bit of fun. Digwell says, any veg with a disease or pest damage is disqualified. So again, that boils back to how well you look after the plant. Of course, if you have got a disease plant, if you have got a pest plant, a pest-riddled plant. It's not been looked after very well. But, well, I say not looked after very well. It's not strictly the case, is it? It's just you get certain pests and diseases. The question is, and comes on to, I guess, so as I said earlier, there are people who will grow specifically for the shows, the competition growers. But I grow for food. So I don't like to use any chemicals at all on my plants. I know there's going to be arguments for and against and little things that people will say, but I don't like to use any type of pesticide, weed killer, anything like that. And I think that's where it can be very difficult to avoid pest damage, because real food will sometimes get affected by certain pests. At the moment, my brassicas are being ravaged by cabbage white butterfly, the caterpillars. I've gone out there, I've sprayed them, I've taken the best care that I can with them, short of putting nets over, but I don't like using nets because they get in my way. I find I can cope with things like nasturtiums and things like that. But would that be good enough if they've got a bit of a nibble for the show? Probably not. Probably not. I remember your lemon curd. Turbo Stream says, I doubt I would enter a show, to be honest. Not really my thing. Fair enough. Fair enough. Lemon curd. I've never made lemon curd, and I'm just thinking, how could I make it? Digwell says, some villages allow softer rules in order to not put entrants off in the future. I think that's a fair way of doing it. Softer rules. I mean, when I went to our local one a couple of years ago, barely, and even yesterday actually, I don't think there was much competition. In fact, one of the categories that I saw, there was only one person who had put something in. So of course they got first prize because there's nothing more to compete it against. So I think in order to encourage more people to participate, there needs to be something to think about in this. So yeah, we need to make it easier, I guess, if we are going to do it. Lemon curd's easy, Richard. Do as a cook along with organic lemons. Well, hashtag cook along if you want to submit that for next week. Hashtag cook along if you want me to do lemon curd, and it all goes into the competition. Same with the mission for the week. If you want to enter a mission or challenge me for the week, hashtag mission into the discussion. Gary says, I'd love to give showing a go, but not sure anything I grow will be good enough. Yeah, I feel the same. I do feel the same. I mean, I don't care that I got wonky carrots. I don't care that my potatoes are not perfect and my leeks aren't perfect, because I'm more interested in it tasting good. A wonky carrot tastes just as good as a straight carrot. The only trouble is it's harder to peel. Do you really need to peel them? But yeah. But I think what you said earlier about showing what you grow is a better attitude, showing what you grow. Nicholas says they could have first year entrants with softer rules. Maybe they could. Maybe, I don't know. That's not for me to decide. Maybe they do, and maybe they already do, for all we know. So I guess, right, what competitions, if you've taken part, what competitions have you done well in, and why, if you have taken part? And added to that, I want to ask anybody out there if they've got anything that, based on what they've harvested so far this year, that they wish they could have put in because they were so proud of it, or it looks so good, or anything like that. At the moment, if you were to look at what you were growing, have you got anything that you could say, yeah, I should have put that in, then you would be pleased with that, and why? Nicholas says, oh yeah, read that one. Anna Jones says, as I grow in my back garden, I have no idea how good or bad my veg is compared to others. So I probably wouldn't dare to enter a contest. But for all you know, it's the same on an allotment. We don't know how good or bad Well, necessarily, we don't know how good or bad other people on our allotment sites veg is. One person I know, his cabbages always look amazing, and that's all he grows, cabbages and cauliflowers. But growing at home, this is you could, for all you know, have the best looking carrots compared to what other people grown. We don't know. We don't know unless you're in it, I guess. Hashtag Cookalong lemon curd. Digwell says COVID saw the demise of many shows. Even the ones that I enter have about 3/4 of the classes that they used to. So it has reduced. It has reduced. Surely this puts us into a bigger stance for being in play for winning. Who knows? Who knows? Many do so-called beginner class. You can only enter once. Rob says, we used to have our annual allotment open day. Who could grow the biggest, longest, heaviest and stuff were there with 12 categories, and I won 6. They stopped having it the year after. But it does make you think. Doesn't it? If you could get involved, if you could really throw yourself into this, you could end up walking away with some nice prizes and even cups. Margaret says, I won second prize for my apple crumble. The ploughing matches have great fruit and veg categories to enter. Again, this is going out into the villages, but ploughing matches are also interesting. And you wouldn't have thought they would have them, but yeah, ploughing matches for that sort of thing as well. Rob says, that's how I feel, Gary. What was that? What did Gary say? I'd love to show, but yeah, I remember now. Digwell says, allotment shows are more like what Richard is talking about. No perfect examples, wonky carrot rule. Wonky carrots rule. I think they do. No, I think they do. I think they taste just as good as anything else. They're just not easy to peel. Beddoes has joined evening or just managed to get Charlotte to take some of the tomatoes home for her salads this week. Beddoes has got a load of tomatoes, more than he's had before, and he doesn't know what to do with them. Perhaps if you've got your local town show, exhibit some of them. Gary says, I've grown big Savoy cabbages this year, but is bigger best? Don't know. This is actually a question I ask myself often. Too much pest damage, perhaps. I'm pleased with my beetroot this year and my elephant garlic. Not sure that's a category, though. I think sometimes they do include, well, they certainly have a garlic category, but whether it's elephant garlic, I don't know. But find out. Go. This is what I say. We've got to go out into our local communities and get involved in these sort of things. This comes up to something I want to discuss a little bit later on. But if we're not involved in our local communities, then we don't know. And one of the key things is these town shows, these local food and produce shows. If we want to see them continue, and I think they are quite important. In my younger days, I would disregard all this. It's only been since I hit my 40s, I've joined the local camera club, and I've suddenly realised how beneficial these local clubs, these local organisations are to people in the area. So my camera club is a good example. We go along there every Wednesday, and there's people that come. They're retired. They're considerably older than me, probably twice my age, and that's the only time one of the only times during the week that they get to see anybody and have a bit of interaction with a hobby. And this is one of the things that gets overlooked with these local shows, these local communities. It's not just a local club, sorry. It's not just about the club, the hobby itself. It's about bringing the community together and giving people something to do. So get involved is what I'm saying. Rob is saying hello to Beddoes. Over on Instagram, I can see Allotment 27 has joined. Welcome along. Lovely to see you. We're talking about local or food and produce shows, exhibiting veg. Should we do it? Should we get involved? I'm leaning more towards we should, even if we lose. Never seen elephant garlic at shows. No, I haven't either, but I've seen garlic. So it makes you wonder. Gary says, does anyone have any suggestions on easier categories to enter as an introduction? So perhaps the potatoes, perhaps the tomatoes. I think what I would be inclined to do, so it's a bit hard. I just, and I know I've got to do this myself. I've got to do this next year myself. I've got to exhibit, because if I'm going to talk about it, I need to do it. I think just enter in one or two or more categories, but just don't expect to win anything. Just give it your best and see how it goes is probably a good start. Or if you don't want to enter, let's say, I don't know if your local one has been already. If it hasn't, and you can go along, perhaps you've got them throughout September, you can go along and have a look and actually see what is going on first. Might be a bit easier to stomach, a bit easier, a bit less nervous. But I think just doing anything. But it's a good question. Good question. What are the easier categories? I'm going to throw that out there. Nicholas says, my late sown beetroot I planted after the first beds were rebuilt. I've harvested my first 3 Friday. Lovely size and condition. I was very pleased. Have a couple of rows to harvest. Fantastic, fantastic. Beetroot, exhibiting beetroot is something we could do. Anna Jones, so are there any rules about using pesticides? Is it allowed or is it cheating? My understanding, and somebody could tell me more, but my understanding is it's perfectly allowed. It's I don't know if that's the right way to do it. I would prefer it not to use pesticides, but that's me. I mean, thing is, are you really going to want to eat the vegetables that you're exhibiting because they've been on the table all day? Loads of people are going to be touching it throughout the day, picking it up and looking at it. Digwell says, fresh, firm, solid heads, outside leaves, fresh, within bloom intact, display within 75 millimeters of the stalk. To Gary, what's that about? Rob says, best bet, Gary, is go along to a few shows and see what competition you got to beat. That is one option. Digwell says, elephant garlic goes in there. Any other veg class? That's a very good point. That's a very good one. Any other veg class? Rob says, Malvern and Harrogate are eye-opening for veg and giant veg. Yeah, when is Malvern been, or is Harrogate up and coming as well? Are they usually in October? Let me know. No rules as they'll never know. Talking about pesticides there. Of course. First word was Savoy. Yeah. Gotcha. 26th of September. What, Malvern or Harrogate? I thought they haven't been. But if you are able to go, I mean, Harrogate is the big one. So is Malvern, really. But Harrogate is the big one for giant veg. Harrogate is also pretty good too. So, is anybody thinking they're going to throw themselves into it next year? Is anybody thinking they're going to exhibit? Let's have a show of hands if you're thinking of exhibit. I'm going to put my hand up, and I don't know when ours. It will be around September sometime next year. So if I exhibit, I tell you what, let's try and do this. We'll try and do the alternative veg grower show next year. Jenny's very kindly offered to help with that. But I think I'm going to exhibit next year. And I think I want to encourage a few of you to get involved as well at your local town shows and see how we get on as a group. Let's say all of us, we meet here every Sunday and we'll say, I entered so many classes. This is what I entered. If you can take photos to show us what you've entered and what positions you've got. And then we can see throughout our Sunday group, who did well next year. It's not a competition, of course, it's just fun. Rob says Harrogate is this week, I think. So there's still going on. It is that prime time for veg shows. Gary's put his thumbs up. He's going to give it a go next year. Excellent. Malvern is becoming a big one for giant veg. Yep, I thought it's between Harrogate and Malvern, isn't it? But I guess Harrogate is more flowers, but for giant veg, Malvern now. Yeah. Turbo Stream says there was an old upload on YouTube of leek growers in the Northeast from 1986. Was interested in the dedication they had to try and grow the best leeks. Yeah, the leek growing, it was highly, highly competitive. I remember as a child watching a news article of somebody who was a competition leek grower, and basically he had them growing in his greenhouse, and they were like perfectly thick growing leeks. They had strings to hold the leaves off the ground, but somebody came along and sabotaged his leeks, he believes, because they were so scared of the competition. This is the downside, the competition. When a competition is in something, people can get quite nasty, can get incredibly, incredibly competitive. I like to think those days are gone, but you never know. Nicola's going to give it a go as well. Digwell says the main one, talking about Malvern. Turbo Extreme says an old BBC documentary, that one I was just talking about. Rob says some folk still say Harrogate. It's difficult to know which is the one, isn't it? But yeah, it all depends where you are in the country as well. Perhaps those who have done shows can give us newbies some hints and tips. That is exactly what I thought. That is exactly what I thought. Digwell said gladly he's going to happily give us tips. Okay, Digwell, and anybody else that has competed before, let's start it off. What is your first tip that you would like to share? What is your biggest tip you would like to share? I'm just not competitive, I'm afraid. It's all about the fun, though. I think this is what I've got to get across. I think it's all about fun. It's all about making it interesting for ourselves, so we feel we want to garden more. We want to continue growing food. We need to make it more interesting for ourselves. And this is something that we could look at of making it more interesting. Thanks. Lovely. Yeah. So what is your biggest tip that you would share to newbies? What is your biggest tip that you would share? While you dwell on that, while you share your biggest tip, let's have a look. So last week, I'll show you this. Last week, I sowed the watercress, and as you can see, it hasn't grown just yet. But no signs of life just yet, but we'll keep an eye on it. But we took a sprig of watercress in water, and as you can see, I think it is starting to grow. Now, I thought there was two. Well, there is two. This one's not growing so much and starting to look a little bit poor, but there's still hope. We change out water pretty much every day, but our watercress grow along that we started, it seems to be progressing quite well. That's one of it. 1 week, once a month, we're doing the sort of sow along thing, a seed of the month that we can all sow. Rob says, I remember when I first had my allotment over 40 years ago, some of the gardeners would sleep on the plots so no one pinched anything. Yeah, it's dedication for you, isn't it? Dedication. But it's what people do. It is the level that people will go to. Digwell says, first tip, read the schedule. Second tip, read the schedule. Third tip, read the schedule. Read the schedule. A good tip there. Beddoes, him. Please never grow corn before, but it looks ready to harvest. How can I be sure? So are you talking about Sweetcorn? I believe you are. So what you want to see is if the tassels, the little bits of string coming out the end, if they've all gone brown, there's a good chance it's ready. Then you want to peel back the husk and just pierce a few bits of the Sweetcorn with your thumb. And if the liquid that comes out, let me get this right. If it's watery, it's too early. If it's milky, it's ready. But if it's a thick milky, it's overripe. So pierce a piece of Sweetcorn and you want that milky look to the liquid that comes out. That's how you know it's ready. Big tip with Sweetcorn, as soon as you harvest it, blanch it. The sugars turn to starch very, very quickly. So starch it, so blanch it to keep it sweet. Gary says, I keep learning and improving, and I guess showing could validate the success or destroy my all self-esteem if it goes poorly. I don't think it should be. I don't think destroying self-esteem is quite right. It's a challenge. If you don't do so well this year, next year you could see if you can do better. It's about learning. As so much I say, it's about learning. Don't let it destroy your self-esteem. Use it as a learning curve. When the ears are brown, turn the top leaves down and squeeze a corn. There you go, as I just said. The silks go dark brown. When a kernel is pressed, it should exude a milky juice. Nicholas says, silks brown, peel back leaves. If you put your nail, milk should be white. There we go. Chili Cat says, I know I've mentioned it before, but the film Sweet Caroline is a very funny account for growing veg for showing. Sweet Caroline. I've not seen that film. Is it on Prime? I think you've mentioned it before. Gary says, is the Veg Grower Podcast Swift F1 at Sweetcorn meant to be a very pale shade of yellow? It can be, actually. It can be a bit of a pale shade of yellow. It can be pale. It can be pale. But it depends if it's ripe. As I said, pierce it and see what the colour of the milk is. Turbo Stream says, I think Gail nailed it. I feel my self-esteem would take a hit if I entered the show. I have always struggled with self-esteem. Yeah, I used to, and I probably do struggle a bit with self-esteem. I've learned to be very thick-skinned these days, and therefore I can, Roxy, leave it alone. I can shrug it off. I can shrug criticism off. I like to use criticism as a reason to learn from that. That's the way I see it. It's constructive criticism, not personal criticism. That's how I've learned it now anyway. Rob says, I would not want to be embarrassed. I embarrass myself every Sunday, so I don't know what you're worried about there. It is. Gary. Beddoes, thanks. Beddoes says, thank you to everyone. No problem, Ian. Not everyone can win, remember. Not everyone can win. Exactly. There can only be one winner, and it's the taking part that counts, doesn't it? If you're not in it, you're never going to win. My sweet corn is ready by other tests, but pot of harvesting by the colour. We'll go get it tomorrow. Thank you. You're welcome. You're welcome. It has been a hard year, so it may not be quite the right colour, but it'll be fine. It'll be fine. Right, this feels like a good opportunity now. We've spoken about the watercress. Rob says, and no, you can't. If you're not in it, you can't win. Exactly. If you're not in it, you can't win. This feels like a good time to go to this week's Cookalong.
Hey! Come and cook with me. Make some food with me. Come on, everybody. We're gonna make some food. Let's go.
Okay, so for this week's recipe, it was to make something out of sweet corn, and I have came up with my famous sweet corn relish. So on a very gentle heat in this pan, I've just fried off very gently one chopped shallot until it's really nice and soft, which, as you can see, this is. Now we're going to add to this some sweet corn, 25 grams of caster sugar and 75 mils of cider vinegar. We're going to stir this all together. We'll also add a bit of kick to it, add a chopped chilli. That's a cayenne chilli, one of the favourites. And we're just going to bring, this is a really quick, easy recipe to make. It goes great if you are having barbecue. So I've taken this round many times when I've been to a barbecue. Always goes down well. I'm just stirring it until all the sugar is dissolved, which it is. We're just going to bring that heat up a little bit because we want to get that to a boil. But I'm stirring constantly at the same time because we really want that all to be complete, all part of one thing. Don't take long. It don't take long at all. Okay, so this sweetcorn relish has been cooking for about 10 minutes now. So all we're going to do is just quickly decant this into another jar and let it cool. The thing I find with this is it's actually always good to cook the day before you will plan to eat it or plan to use it, just to let all those flavours really amalgamate and work together. You can tell the shallots are pretty much non-existent. They've really wilted down to almost nothing. But boy, does this smell good. How does it taste, of course? Let's find out in the studio. So here we are. This is the finished article, this sweetcorn relish with a hint of chili. Just very simple. Everything here I have grown myself. The shallots, the sweetcorn, the chili, the sugar and the cider vinegar, obviously brought in. So what does it taste like? Little bit too much vinegar at the end, but boy, does that taste good. Just hit with a bit too much vinegar, but it's a relish. It is a relish. You're not really meant to eat it like that. It goes great on hot dogs and things like that. Absolutely lovely. I may not actually be the vinegar thinking about it. It's probably the chili that's actually just kicked in. The cayenne chili. That is, oh, my mouth is on fire. Lovely. I am going to give that a good 9.5 out of 10. Yeah, I may have needed to tone down the chili, but I don't care. I love it. I love hot chilies. So, what are you saying in the group? Where were we? Digwell says to Gary, just get one and cook it and you will know then. Yeah, go give it a try. Jenny says, I've been growing baby corn rather than sweet corn. I find it much tastier and more harvest as you don't need the wind to pollinate. Rats helping themselves, etc. Baby sweet corn. I don't grow baby sweet corn, actually. I tend to just stick with normal sweet corn, but perhaps one year I have to do baby sweet corn. Rob says, I had a great harvest of peppers last week. Did a video. Yeah. Peppers have been fantastic this year. I've got to say, peppers and chilies, aubergines. I've had so many aubergines. Aubergines have done fantastic this year. Tomatoes, the fruiting crops have done well this year, basically. Turbo Sloop says, I never got to sample sweet corn last year. The badger got there first. Always a problem with the badgers. On my original allotment, everybody gave up growing sweet corn because of the badgers. I managed to do it because I grew them in this large box and the badgers couldn't get to them. But it was quite a large box and it was quite hard to pull off. But I did it. Gary says, I will dig well, thanks. What is baby corn, Jenny? That happened to me the first year I grew it. It's always a problem. Badgers are always a problem for that. Jenny says, I dig well. I have some great looking paprika peppers. Lovely. Digwell says, it's a super sweet SH2 and they tend to be paler than the standard sugary and sugar enhanced. So it is paler. A very small sweet corn, says Rob to Gary, talking about what is baby corn. Jenny says it's an immature sweet corn. You've got to get the right varieties, though. You do need the right varieties. Over on Instagram, Mark J8108 has joined. Lovely. Welcome on. We're talking the conversation's gone on to sweet corn now. Rob says they use them a lot in Chinese food and have them lightly battered. Yummy. Baby corn, yeah. Jenny says mini pop is a fantastic baby corn variety to try. Digwell says that's not a paprika. I still shudder at that video. I remember that video when Digwell ate that. It was quite hot, I believe. What have we got? Turbo Stream says I won't bother again, Rob. I don't eat it anyway. I only grew it as the seeds came in the supporters pack. Digwell says, why is dyslexia so hard to spell? Jenny says, Digwell, sorry, but I did laugh at a lot. I hope these ones are not as hot. Jenny says, I'm surprised I could. Hang on, right. Let's try and find something I can really do. Gary says, thanks. So I didn't realize they were actually sweet corn. Do you still get one per plant? Good question, actually. As I said, I've never grown baby corn, so I don't know. Badger likes mashed potato. Bodger and Badger. Anna Jones says, Lark and Swift are the only two I can get to grow up here in the northeast, but the grey squirrels can really be a nuisance munching it. Yeah, Swift is a good one, actually. I like Swift because I do send that out quite regularly. It's one of my favourite sweet corns, certainly. I do try and grow different types of sweet corn because I always think it's good to mix things up. I tried this. I actually grew this sweet corn list year that I got from Premier Seeds. I can't remember what the variety was. And I just popped it in. And all of them came up absolutely beautifully. They were growing lovely in root trainers. Took them outside, hardened them off. They were still growing. They were about that tall. And then I transplanted them down on the allotment and they died. Really annoying, really annoying. Rob says, I did not get the chance to watch many vids last week. Major computer problems. I really do need to watch more videos. I keep telling myself, watch more videos. We've got a Cookalong corn dog. Don't forget, if anybody wants to make a suggestion for a recipe, hashtag Cookalong or a mission, hashtag mission. For next week. Only works on the Instagram or Facebook, I'm afraid. If you're watching on Instagram, it doesn't quite work. I don't think it works. One per branch, yes. Talking about the corn, baby corn, one per branch. Rob says, I love corn on the cob, roasted and loads of butter. Me too. Me too. We had that the other day, funnily enough. Love it. Or in a barbecue, even better. Wrapped on foil in the barbecue. No, not wrapped in foil. Just there, getting a little bit flame grilled. Oh, lovely. Yeah, lovely, lovely indeed. So this feels like a good chance now. We've been talking about sweet corn quite a bit. What have I got on my list? Let's go for the rant of the week. Now, this is a bit of a difficult rant to have because my rant I'm guilty of doing myself. And there's a bit of a story behind it. Now, my rant is that an allotment, my note is allotments should be self-sustaining. Now, to add some detail to that, while I was at our local town and produce show on yesterday, our local allotment councillor, person who looks after the allotments from the council, was there. He had a stand trying to encourage people with the allotments, but he was saying that looking at ways of trying to reduce the deficit, i.e. it costs more money to keep the allotments running than what they have coming in from everybody's rent. And they were looking at ways of how they can bring it in. And some of the ideas that they had, I personally don't like. He didn't like them either. One of the ideas was basically charging people a fee to be on the waiting list, say £25 to get on the waiting list. Didn't like that idea, but That's an idea they're floating. There was also talk of fining people whose allotments are not up to scratch. But I sort of said, what's the level? What's the line that needs to be crossed with that? But at the same time, an allotment should be self-sustaining itself. There should be enough money coming in for an allotment to self-sustain itself. I don't believe taxpayers should be subsidizing what few of us actually use. But does that mean that all allotments, if they're not self-sustaining, they should close? I don't think it should. I don't think it should be closed. I think allotments have a lot of benefits to everybody in the community, in the wild, and things like that. But should allotments be self-sustaining? That's my rant. Should an allotment be self-sustaining? Should it be cost-effective to have an allotment? I think it should. What do you think on that rant? Help me out with getting my thoughts on that. Right. Digwell says, #mission, do the corn dog of the Cookalong. PMSL, delete it if it wins. So I think, how many Cookalong missions have we got? 2 entries for the Cookalong and 1 entry for the mission. So it could end up cooking both of those. Jenny says, if Instagram hashtag don't work, read them out and I'll enter them on their behalf. Thank you. That's a good idea. That's a good idea, Jenny. Thank you. Super Happy Alien has joined. Hi, I'm new here. I cooked a sweet corn in tomatoes in slow cooker in the allotment, powered by solar. What was involved? Is that just sweet corn in the tomatoes? What recipe was that? Tell us more. Digwell says, waiting list fee. No, fine. No, fine. No, too subjective. That was my problem with the fine as well. It felt too subjective to me as well. The waiting list doesn't feel right either, but I can sort of understand the logic behind that because it's going to weed out. Again, talking to our guy, I have many conversations with him, but he says he gets a lot of people on the waiting list, and when an allotment comes available, they then don't want it because they suddenly realise how much work is involved. So having a fee might just weed out those that are just playing at it, but at the same time, I don't like the idea of it. The fine seems too subjective as well, but you know, I worked out we've got about 300 allotment plots in Littlehampton across several sites. My site alone has over 200, so the bulk of those are on the site. And we're paying about £100 a year for the allotment rent. It does go up each year. So that's 30 grand they have coming in for the allotments. And basically it's costing more to run the allotments than what they have coming in. And that deficit needs to come down. It should be costing the taxpayer more for our hobby in some ways. It's a difficult one, isn't it? It's a very difficult one to stay right on. Rob says, hi and welcome to Super Happy Alien. Gary says, problem with fines and extra charges and prices increase if you don't pop off is... Remember that. Problem with fines and extra charges and price increases is you pot off people who can't afford it. I think allotments should be available to all people regardless of income. Totally agree with you there. 180%. I agree with you. I would actually go as far to say those that can't afford or are financially struggling should have priority for an allotment because they probably need to grow food more than anybody else, especially if I haven't got any plot land at home. So I totally agree with you there. It does feel a bit counterproductive. Nicholas says, if people had lots of water butts, they could reduce water bills, water rates, bill plot holders who leave plots in mess with lots of rubbish, plastic, etc. So this is actually something that came out because our allotment does try to fine people who leave their allotment plots when they give it up. And if there's load, they try and fine for the clearing of the site. You know, my neighbours, what they gave up over a year ago, and they've got a greenhouse, they've got trees, they've got plastic pots and stuff all over their allotment site. And they can't bill them because they probably left the country or something. There's no way of getting that money back. unless we do charge a upfront fee for the key and everything, which they don't get returned. It's probably only 20 quid or something. So yeah, in practice, the billing of people who leave plots in a mess, great idea, but it doesn't work in practice. Turbo Stream says your council should hand the allotment to an allotment committee to run it by members. We have that. But because it's such a big site, the council still own the land. It's not the running of an allotment by the members. It's the insurance, the admin side, the water. What else goes on? They had to get somebody down to cut the grass for the paths and things, and the fencing and stuff like that. An allotment committee can't do all that. It's the actual council side of things that needs to do it. Digwa says many allotments allow flowers to be grown. How can that be self-sufficient? Many allotments allow flowers to be grown. How can that be self-sufficient? Well, I have no problem with people on their allotment. If they want to grow flowers, go ahead, grow it. We may be into our veg growing. Not everybody is. Some people do love to grow flowers. They may not have any space at home. They may live in a flat or a balcony and they want to grow flowers. Got no problem with that as long as they maintain it. In fact, some of our allotments are incredibly beautiful with lots of different flowers. Got no problem with that myself. An allotment is just a garden, isn't it? We're all different at the end of the day. Rob says we got 3 letters, a good talking to, then got kicked off in September. Well, you did, Rob. You got kicked off, did you? Thomas Stewart says, from what you have said, your allotment guy doesn't know anything about growing food. He admits that. He doesn't know much about growing food. I've had really good conversations. He is a council employee. 25% of his time is taken up with the allotments, and it's more the admin and getting the waiting lists and stuff. He knows bits about growing food, but at the same time, he knows if an allotment's a mess, it's a mess. So, you know, he's pretty fair. He's pretty fair. Rob says we must grow 70% of veg on our plots. That's fair enough. I don't agree with that myself because everybody's garden is different, but I think it has to be maintained. That's the key thing for me. Nicholas says, I'll have large running off water collection from the site building. Well, we don't have a site building on my site. Water butts are a great idea, but we're not on a meter, so we just pay a nominal fee. Makes no difference. It's not going to lower the water bill because we don't have a meter on our site. Super Happy Alien. I run Sultan's allotment, and with 3 oversight, a part of an association, we have our own shops, etc. Yeah, we do have an allotment shop that goes into the allotment association, not so much for the running of the allotments. 2 different things. The allotment association is more the club. The running is through the council. 2 different things. Gary says, what costs 30k in running an allotment? Water bill, ground rent. Well, if you think about it, 30k is probably a wages for one person to run all the admin side in the council. So, as I said, our guy, he does that 1 day a week. Then you need to pay for the maintenance team who cut the grass a couple of times a year, repairing the fences if they get damaged, which is rare. Insurance, that's quite a key thing that they have to pay out for insurance. Water bill, there's a lot in it. There is a lot in it, but wages alone, I mean, 30 grand is probably one person's wage in a council, easy. So it sounds a lot, but it doesn't go very far at all. Alien says, I cooked with a few peppers and bits of chickens. Excellent. Nicholas says, maybe a holding deposit of £100 or something will help deter or help towards the cost of clearing a plot. Yeah, a refundable deposit, that is an option. Digger says they need a, e.g. £100 deposit, only returned if a plot is tidy when you leave. Again, I agree with that. I think we do that, but I can't remember how much it is. I paid it 10 years ago, so I'm still a bit like, oh yeah, but it's not. I think that is a good way of doing it. I do agree. Rob says we have to leave a £50 deposit now. Yeah, I think we do the same. I'm sure we do. No, read it again. What did Rob say? What have I missed? Oh, we must grow 70% veg on our plots. Is that what you said? You might have to write it again if I've read it, got it wrong. Jenny says, could you have a maintenance committee, then no grass cutting, etc. fees? The trouble is, it's cutting off the trees and things like that. So we have to have the. I use grass cutting as an example, but because the roads and everything, the trees alongside it, the hedgerows, they need maintenance. There's people having to trim those. Basically, the way I would look at it at the moment, the council is trying to cut its costs as much as possible anyway. So they're not doing as much as they used to. They're only doing what has to be done. You got to remember, if anybody has an accident, they could be liable. So the grass cutting fees, it's difficult. And the size of our allotment site is huge. So there probably are savings that could be made. Don't get me wrong. I think I can think of quite a few. But are they going to save 30 grand? Are they going to save it to bring it down under 30 grand? I don't think they can. Toby Stu says, our allotment is owned by a local Bourneville Village Trust. Our committee do everything from grass cutting to paying the water bill. The trust doesn't get involved with the running of the site. There you go. You're lucky then. You're very lucky. Ellie says, I started a £50 deposit and my allotments help cut costs. Absolutely. Again, I don't think a deposit is a bad idea. Digwa says, what I mean is some allotments are actually called a garden. You can grow what you want. Yeah, I totally agree. I've always had the problem with the definition of allotments being for growing veg. I've always regarded it as just being a leisure garden, an outdoor garden, a space to grow whatever you want. Ballycillian says, most plots are too big for the owner to keep under control. Be better having a percentage of mini plots. We do that actually. So new or older plots can work, resulting in more plots and more rents and better kept plots. So we do actually do that. Some of our bigger plots have been, mine. So I've got 2 half plots, but they're 2 half plots of the same plot. My plot was basically cut in half. I've kept it as 2 half plots because I get better deals. But what they don't do, so because mine's, if I paid for the half plots, is exactly half of the price of a large plot. And if it was a quarter plot, it would be quarter of the price of a full-size plot. That's how they've worked it out, which I think is quite fair. I do think it's quite fair. But agree, again, people will take on allotments that are too big for themselves and things like that. It's again, we're going into those grounds that it becomes difficult. Gary says, allotment shop is a way to close the budget gap, though. Again, we've got that. We do have that, but I think that goes through the allotment committee, not the... but that's something we could look at. Something we could look at and bringing it together. Alien says, we had no top-ups before because we pay for it ourselves. Absolutely. Rob says, about being kicked off allotments. I can't remember what you said now. Anna says, some of the YouTube channels have compulsory working parties on their site. Do you have those? We don't. Again, you're not going to get working parties. I mean, cutting down the oak trees that border our site and things like that. So the grass cutting is a fairly easy thing to do and sort out, but that's not the only thing that the maintenance team does. There's a lot more involved than I think we really give them credit for. What if our water, we got piped water to several dipping stations? What if that pipe bursts? Somebody needs to come along and fit it. The fence panel's being replaced, things like that. It all goes into it. Digwell says we can't even get the plot holders to put waste in the correct compost bays. No change. They can't be trusted to cut the grass. Absolutely, absolutely. Over on Instagram, Deb's Bunny has joined. Welcome along. We've been discussing exhibiting veg. We're now talking about a bit of a rant about how we can reduce the cost of running an allotment site so it costs less for the taxpayer. Rob says most of allotments will be sold off soon anyway. This is why we've got to stop it. This is why I think we've got to make it so allotments are not a burden to the taxpayer, because if they're less likely to be sold off. As I said, 30 grand, it sounds like a lot of money, but it gets swallowed up. Now, one of the great advantages I've got with my allotment site is that we've got two fairly busy roads, two main roads that run alongside it with these fences. And I put forward the suggestion of why not sell advertising space on those fences. Get a local company to pay so much a year to advertise on those fences. People driving past are going to see it. Easy income, easy income. As I said, I think it's about bringing that costs to make allotments less of a burden to the taxpayer. Lynn says the cost of allotment sites is insignificant compared to some of the financial mistakes numerous local authorities make every day. Also, the environmental benefits of the plots is priceless. I don't disagree with you. I don't disagree. The environmental benefits particularly are very important, but we are also easy targets being allotments. We've got a large amount of land that people who aren't allotmenteers often view as being an eyesore because, let's face it, allotments can be a bit sort of ramshackled. We build things out of pallets and stuff like that. There are exceptions, of course, but it can be a little bit ramshackled. So they do get classed often as an eyesore. As I said, 300 plots within Littlehampton, which is a town that probably has, I don't know what the population, but several thousand people. So less than 1% of the population is using an allotment site. Environmental benefits aside, it's easy target. It's an easy way to make a saving. Get rid of your allotments, sell the land, sudden load of money comes in. Turbo Stream says it could be worse, Richard. You could be living in Birmingham. Yeah, the big men just extend the all-out strike till next spring. Yeah, it could be worse. Absolutely. But this is about allotments. And the discussions I had. I find it quite interesting now. I do find it interesting because it's something we have to think about. Jenny says trees and hedgerows may be the council's responsibility anyway. Yep. Just shifting the cost, which is cheeky. Make sure they chip the tree hedge cuttings and not pay for them to be taken away. Thing is, you're right. It may be the council's responsibility, but if your allotment was there, those hedgerows would be dug up, and that land's turned to housing, so it won't be their responsibility. So making more of a saving. Alien says my rule is as long as the land is used and half for food. I think as long as all the land is used, that's the key thing. Turbo Street says like most councils, they seem to pay top dollar for the simplest of things. They do, but you've got to remember, effectively they are a business and they got to do things the right way. They've got to be seen to do things the right way. Agreed, they can make a lot of savings, and some of the things they do cost a lot more than it would cost us, but they've also got to make sure that health and safety and everything like that is spot on, because they could get in a lot of trouble at the same time, and then our taxpayers' money is used to foot that bill if they get sued. So, yeah. Rob says we have a 20-foot container on our site full of fresh air. No one wants to take it on. So we've got a 20-foot container. That is our allotment shop. That's an idea for you. See about using it as an allotment shop. Jenny says it will probably be cheaper to sort your own insurance and not go through the council. The council own the land. So therefore, they have to insure the land. They have to have liability insurance and various other insurances. So we could take an allotment on our plot, but what if somebody gets run over on the road? What if, a lot of what ifs, basically the council has to insure themselves. That is ridiculous, Digwell. What is ridiculous? What is ridiculous? Have I missed something there? Turbo Stream says, we have working parties on allotment regularly. I helped only the other week. It sounds like your allotment needs a bit more member input. It's not just my allotment site. There's 6 different sites. This is coming out of the overall budget. Our allotment, I've got to hand it to them. Our site is pretty well kept. You know, my allotment I had in Brighton, the paths were overgrown and difficult to walk down. Our site, you know, it's pretty well kept. It is pretty well kept, so I can't fault them. Until someone doesn't bother and a kid steps on the rake. Yeah, this is it. This is it. Ian's joined. Hi, Richard. I'm busy at home, but love listening in. Lovely to hear from you, Ian. Alien says, we have a set of rules with the discretion of the site manager, who happens to be me. We've even have wind turbines, barbecue area, site toilet, site rotator to use. Yeah. All allotment sites are different. There's different things that go on. Jenny says, we had separate insurance for my old plot. We all contributed to a blanket insurance, covered injury, damage, weather events, etc. on all plots and communal areas. Yeah, but the council or the owner of the land will have insurance as well. It's the same as at the top of our downs, the South Downs is like a national park, but there's some car parks up there that people can park in. Now, the owner of the land, who owns the actual car park, but also the farmland around it, they have to take insurance out to make sure that they don't get in trouble if something happens on the land. So it's easy for people to get sued, basically. Thomas Stream says, I'm surprised Birmingham hasn't sold off their allotments, given how they nearly went bust in 2023. This is what I'm saying. It's very easy for councils to go bust, and our allotments could be easy pickings. Ballysean says, not just allotments, our council loses a fortune running leisure centres and cemeteries that have to be maintained, and you only pay a fee once to get buried. Exactly right. I mean, I actually do think there's something a bit wrong with this. I mean, so our councils run a leisure centre, but members have to pay. It's quite a bit of money, either to be a member to use the facilities, or you have to pay to use the facilities on top of them being run. And actually, it's quite expensive. I think ours is like 80 quid a month to be a member. And if you just want to go for a swim, it's 12 quid a swim or something like that. It's a ridiculous amount of money, I think, for a leisure centre. But at the same time, should the council, and I say this because I think council tax needs to go on what council tax needs to go on, namely looking after the taxpayer. It's hard, I admit. Perhaps I am lucky with our site. I think you are. I think you are lucky. Digwell says, even our privately owned site takes care of insurance. Part of our £30 a year rent. Yeah. So, as I said, part of our rent will be paying towards that insurance. But it's still a lot of money. And as I said, 30 grand a year sounds like a lot of money, but it barely covers one person's wages for a year. And especially when you factor in national insurance and pensions, it's a lot of money that it costs to employ somebody. Jenny says, council rent the land to you. Conditional rent is insurance in place. Therefore, you should be able to have a site insurance policy. It worked with ours, may be worth exploring to save costs. It may be that may be something they look at, but who's going to rent the land? I mean, I say that because our site has 200 allotments, and some of those are half or quarters. So there could be 400 people, probably not. Let's say there could be 300 people on my allotment site overall. Who's going to be on the committee? Who's going to really try and keep 300 people? I mean, that's a lot of people to try and keep on site. It's difficult to manage that many people. Bedo says, how far do you go? I don't have kids in school, but so why do they finance those out with my money? Again, I agree with that. I don't get to decide what they waste my money on. Again, I agree with that. I totally agree with that. But I come back to allotments are easy pickings. Schools, wow, there's a necessity for schools. children need educating. Allotments, we see there's a necessity for allotments because we're allotmenteers, we're gardeners, but some people don't. Some people don't. How much is good building plots cost nowadays? Well, I put it like this: for the land, it's probably 3 acres on my allotment site. So that's 300 grand that they could sell the plot for, the site for. It's a lot of money in their bank, isn't it? 300 grand. And then if they build houses on top of that, well, I would suspect they would probably have to, the builder would build houses for the council, for locals, so that, and then they're going to get council tax coming in from the houses on there, plus housing association houses. So 300 grand plus long-term council tax, it's easy pickings. Digwell says our councils make a dead loss on their cemeteries. I really hope that dead loss is a joke, because I laughed there at that. If it wasn't, I apologise. Seems to be a minefield depending on the council and the area. Yeah, it does. I mean, I will say our council do run ours very well. I cannot fault them. They are run very well, but just expensive at the same time. We have a self-liability insurance. It's all at own risk. It lowers cost. Again, where the council is involved, there's a good chance they could be to blame if they own the land, etc., etc. So they've got to play it careful. Any photos this week? Yeah, I was going to get into the photos in just a moment. Good plots can fetch £1 million an acre. Exactly. Chili Cake says, I thought that allotments had a legal protection. The current laws mean that they cannot be got rid of unless they are underused. They do have a certain amount of legal protection if a demand is there. But as I said, if a council is going bust and they need the money, they could potentially get rid of them. And it has been happening. There was something in the news a few weeks ago where some allotments were sold off, even though people were working them, because the council needed the money. So it does happen. It does happen. It's not easy, but it does happen. So before I go to the photos, something I started featuring is what task has made you happy this week? What particular job has really pleased you this week? For me, it's actually been chatting to our allotment officer that I've just been talking about, because it was really constructive, really interesting conversation that I got out of it. He asked about my allotment. He said he saw it a few weeks ago. And just wondered if everything was okay. And I just explained it's been a hard year, but it was really, really constructive conversation. So for me, that was a good task ticked off for this week. What about you? What task has been your favourite task? What have you been happy to tick off? Or what task has made you really happy this week? In the meantime, let's have a look at your photos, because we do like looking at your photos as always. So first of all, Turbo Stream has sent in this photo of his plot shot. Absolutely very happy to see these photos. Always good to see. I've got another photo from Turbo Stream I want to show you in a minute as well. Added to that, so Digwell shared this photo of something that is going through Parliament. The peat debate is ongoing. About whether or not using it in compost, etc., etc. There's lots of to-ing and fro-ing at the moment. I think I've come to the sort of stance, peat is gone. We're not going to be using it in our compost. We've got to try and work with what we can use instead. Beddoes, some typical Beddoes humour here. He says, so which hose spray do you use yourself? I tend to use the shower myself, but what about you? What one of these do you use? Is it centre, flat, jet, shower, mist, soaker, or cone? This is, of course, if you use a hose pipe. Now, Mark has shared this photo of some of his fermented foods that he's been creating. It looks really good, I've got to say. It looks interesting indeed. Look very pretty, don't they? I'm starting getting more into fermented foods, so I'm finding this rather interesting. Kate has shared this meme, but it tells you the truth, doesn't it? A wheelbarrow full of spinach for dinner. It looks a lot, but once you reduce it down, it's not that much when it comes to spinach. In fact, an example I would use, that a huge wheelbarrow full like that, once you wilted it down, it'll probably fill up one of those frozen bags that you can get from the supermarket. Spinach, you need a lot of spinach for it to be worth growing or to be self-sufficient in. Gary has harvested a few beetroot here, as you can see here. They look fantastic. I particularly like the hori knife, though, I've got to say. But yeah, a lot of beetroot. What did you do with it? What did you turn it into? Nathan's tomatoes are coming to an end. I mean, it's been a good year for tomatoes, so it's always good to see some delicious things at the same time. But yeah, look lovely, though. Look, a lot of tomatoes, too. Sarah is asking if this is scab or blight on her potatoes, but I think Digwell told her what it actually was. But if anybody has any thoughts, it's in our Facebook group. Go share some help. Digwell, I don't normally do 2 photos from one person, but this week he did share a plot shot of plot 2, and this is it. Plot shot of plot 2. Last week we saw plot 1. This is plot 2. Really, again, quite full with lots of growth going on. So please do keep sharing your photos, post in our Facebook group, send to me via social media or email me, richard@veggrowerpodcast.co.uk. That's richard@veggrowerpodcast.co.uk. So moving on from that, what I want to talk about next week, bit of a weird subject that I've got penciled in. I'm thinking about talking about prepping. You hear often about these doomsday preppers, and they grow all their own food in order to survive the nuclear blast and things like that. But I don't want to go to that strength. I want to look at, would you consider yourself a prepper if you grow your own food? Does that sound like an interesting subject? I haven't quite worked out the question I want to ask, but it should make an interesting debate. Digwell says many sites are not owned by the council, they just lease the land, typically 30-40 year lease. Some of those in the news the other week are under threat of closure, are leased. Didn't know that. I knew there was some, it wasn't quite as simple, but it was in threat of being sold off. Rob says one of our sites has been sold off to the cemetery. Cemetery needs more land, so there you go. As I said, it does happen. Bally City says, why do council car parks have signs saying you park at your own risk if they have insurance? Because you do park at your own risk. It's their insurance is not going to cover everything. It's so they don't get sued. That's what their insurance is there for. So if they get sued, and it could be something stupid, but it's to cover their asses, basically. Digwell says it all depends on the type of allotment site, statutory, temporary, private, or charitable. As I say, it's very complicated when it comes to allotments. Turbo Stream says, I strained my back making the beds to prevent injury for next year. Yep, absolutely. Digwell says, I'm the opposite. Pete is here to stay, according to the traders I speak to at shows. Oh, you're not at Glee this year, are you? Just remembering this week. Otherwise, I'm there on Tuesday. Rob says, I use the shower one for watering. Yep, me too. Rob says, when are they having a vote on it? Digwell says they don't cover break-ins. There we go. It was due on the 12th. Commons not sitting. Now due on the 31st. Commons not sitting. You couldn't make it up. Good chat indeed. Don't forget to like, follow, subscribe, click the notifications so that you know when we go live. Rob says, while they mess it about, we can still buy Pete. All good news. No, not a subject I'm interested in. Sorry. No, that's fine. That's fine. There's always going to be subjects that people aren't interested in. It's not. I'm finding this really hard to think about how to phrase it, but or perhaps prepping. Gary, I wouldn't call self-sufficiency, foraging, etc. prepping. Yeah, I think self-sufficiency is probably the better thing. Can we be self-sufficient in our gardens and allotments? That might be the way to look at it. I've put down prepping because there's a lot of conversations going on, or a lot of it on the news. Digwell was not gleeful for me. Glee was not gleeful for me, says Digwell. Yeah, self-sufficiency, that might be the way to do it. That may be the better way. Jenny says, personally, I wish they would ban peat compost and stop using it in whiskey, etc. as well. It's a valuable habitat to lots of wildlife and wildflowers. It's a debate we're not going to get into this late in this show. Chili Cake, prepping for a zombie apocalypse. Yeah, exactly. Did you? Oh, many years ago, I actually did a podcast on that, prepping for a zombie apocalypse. It was very, very popular. And that was going, perhaps have to do that again this year, perhaps. Anna Jones says, we need Idaho on here. She's a prepper. Is she? Is she? I didn't know that. Digwell says, I got banned from filming, if you remember. Yes, I do remember Digwell. That's why I thought you weren't going. I'm still going, but that's me. Right. Mission. So last week, the mission was to find Digwell's photo on Instagram, which I did manage to find. And as you can see, this was the photo that he shared. Not on Instagram, sorry, on YouTube. It was very difficult to find, though, I've got to say. Very difficult to find. So, hang on, I've left that photo up there. So that was the mission accomplished as far as I'm concerned. So let's have a look at what we should be doing next week. What have we got? So there we go. Let's give it a quick. Oh, there's only one entry, and that was the corn dog. The corn dog. So we're going to do that. We're going to have to make the corn dog next week. What we got? What else have we got? So share screen. The Cookalong for next week. Let's find out what it is. 2 entries between Digwell or Nicola. It's going to be Nicola, I think, which was the lemon curd. Well, we're going to do the corn dog as the mission, the lemon curd as the Cookalong. That's how we're going to do it. Right. I think that is everything. I think I'm going to wrap this one up. It's been a good conversation. It's been very interesting hearing your thoughts on running an allotment as well. I found that really interesting myself, but we are into overtime. It's time to pack up and get out of here. We will be back again next Sunday at 6, where we're going to talk about self-sufficiency, not prepping, self-sufficiency. I'd love to see you there. Although prepping for a lot of a zombie apocalypse, we want to make it fun. Anyway, I'll figure that all out this week. Thanks so much for joining us. Thanks so much for joining me. It's been an absolute pleasure seeing you as always. Until next time, please take care.